Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 631. 3 Days of Absence. Don't tell me that this matter was targeted at me? Klein was alarmed as he immediately became abnormally awake. As a person who had several similar experiences, he had quite a persecution complex. It really is possible. The Mother Tree of Desire used a dream to send Flight Ken a revelation just as I arrived at Orvie Island and began an entire series of plans. The first day I met Bill Brando was the day the Naturism sect held the ritual to make the tramp stand-in die from gluttony. If they were targeting Admiral Amirius, the plan needed to ensure that there was no lack of a stand-in, and that he couldn't find an additional helper or other means to conceal his departure. But clearly, this is something that cannot be confirmed. My involvement is proof. If the target was me, then the previous problem is explained. Klein used his clown powers to control his facial expression as he gloomily looked at Flight Ken. With such a theory, more questions emerged in his mind. But how were they certain that Bill Brando would seek me out? The news of Gairman Sparrow being able to change into anyone was spread from Vice Admiral Ailment Tracy. It's an element beyond the Mother Tree of Desire's control. Of course, taking a different point of view, it's precisely due to the spreading of this news and my arrival in Orvie Island that made the Mother Tree of Desire send the revelation and put the plan into motion. But why would she want to corrupt me? My grudge with the Rose School of Thought hasn't reached the point of garnering the attention of an evil god. All I did was kill a Sequence 5 Wraith, a Sequence 6 Zombie, and a Sequence 7 Werewolf, with Miss Sharon and Merrick, snatching away the Scarlet Lunar Corona and biological poison bottle. My hunt against Admiral of Blood was terminated before it even started. It was an idea that didn't translate into action. The only thing that happened was the killing of Steele Mavady. The act of revenge that resulted from this matter shouldn't even exceed the attention of a saint. Was it something special about me that resonated with some item formed by the aura of the Mother Tree of Desire on this island the moment I stepped onto it? But I've never faced any abnormal reactions from the holy artifacts left behind by other deities in Backland or Tingent City. Furthermore, I did divine the matter above the gray fog and received the revelation that the death of the tramp was solely a coincidence. It wasn't arranged by a legendary creature or Grade 0 sealed artifact, but the outcome ended up different. This is the first time that divination above the gray fog has been disrupted in the true sense of the word. I didn't even notice that it had been disrupted. Klein's thoughts came to a pause as he discovered the most serious problem. Back when the matter involved 0-08, all he received was an ineffective revelation and not a disrupted outcome. Therefore, it's a power that exceeds a Grade 0 sealed artifact? The Mother Tree of Desire personally disrupted the matter, and she is a true deity, herself? But it's very difficult for the 7 gods to influence the real world. There has to be a corresponding ritual. Yes, I had also divined the risks of acting as Amirius above the gray fog and received a revelation saying that it was an acceptable risk. The outcome does match the development of the situation, so it wasn't disrupted. The more Klein thought about the matter, the more perplexed he became. What was most incomprehensible about it was that if the target of corruption was himself, why didn't he suffer any demanding trials, and he instead solved the problem in a relatively simple manner? This made the Mother Tree of Desire's arrangement appear like a joke. While pondering with this weight in mind, Klein nearly crushed Flight Ken. He asked again, to verify his conjecture. To his surprise, the Naturism sect hadn't held any rituals to request the Mother Tree of Desire to disrupt any divination over the past week. They didn't make any special arrangements aimed towards the failure of the project. Strange. Klein took out a gold coin and flipped it as a final confirmation. Even without divination, he was almost certain that Flight Ken wasn't lying. Firstly, the man was already on the brink of a mental collapse, making him lack the ability to fabricate something reasonable. Secondly, Flight Ken's answers adhered to logic, completely confirming whatever Klein had deliberately kept to himself. The gold coin landed in his open palm, the king's portrait facing up, indicating a positive response. Combined with the divination statement, Klein finally confirmed that Flight Ken wasn't lying. After temporarily suppressing his puzzlement, he cast his gaze towards Flight Ken once again. He asked without a smile, "What deeds have you done in the past that violate the kingdom's laws or the moral fabric of society?" Flight Ken was taken aback for a few seconds as his mental state seemed to instantly turn for the better. From his point of view, his ploy against Admiral Amirius was the most serious crime, something that would most easily enrage this important figure. Everything else was trivial and nothing that needed a demigod to waste his time and energy on. Therefore, after skipping the important matters and coming to an ordinary topic, it meant that he might enjoy a good outcome. Flightkin couldn't help but reveal a discreet smile as he hastened to recount. "I once tortured a family for an entire night for their property, and abandoned them in the woods after murdering them. Then, I used fake documents and successfully obtained a sizable amount of wealth. I deliberately enticed many believers to indulge in their desires and watched as their emptiness and regret after the deed slowly paved the way for them to become fertilizer for the mother tree of desire. I once tricked many ladies to abide with their nature, an excuse for them to be redeemed by the spirits, allowing me to possess them. I tortured believers who attempted to renounce the religion, slicing off every part that protruded off their bodies." He recounted each and every sin of his, without any thoughts of concealing the truth. Klein felt disbelief with what he heard. He never expected anyone to be evil to this extent. As Flightkin got increasingly excited from recounting his past deeds, he saw Admiral Amirius stand up without an expression before circling around the desk and standing in front of him. The Admiral then raised his left palm. A terrifying mouth appeared in the middle of the left palm, revealing 2 rows of illusory, white, and eerie teeth that were icy cold. "No! No!" A sharp and horrified scream resounded in the room for a long time until silence prevailed. After a while, Klein bent down to pick up a blob of grayish-white light that resembled a shrunken brain. This was the beyonder characteristic of a lunatic. Unfortunately, Flightkin had been searched before being brought here. He didn't leave behind any cash or items. Klein snapped his fingers and ignited the rest of the clothes. As he looked at his left shoulder, which was beginning its recovery process, he sat behind the desk and remained silent amidst the dancing scarlet flames. Once the traces were no longer noticeable, he pulled at a corresponding rope, making the bell outside ring. Luan released the restriction and entered, instinctively observing every corner. "Instruct the guards and the base personnel to cooperate with the Orvi police to do a cleanup of the Naturism sect. It's best if clues can be found and a number of Rose School of Thought members are caught." Klein solemnly gave the order. "Yes, Your Excellency," Luan answered respectfully. He didn't ask where Flightkin was, as though the leader of the Naturism sect never existed. Klein didn't pay too much attention to the raid on Orvi Island. Using the excuse that he was slightly injured, he declined the remaining schedules for the next 2 days. This meant that he didn't need to worry about needing to exude the might of a high-sequence beyonder of the Arbiter pathway after expending the 9th law charm. Nearing noon, Luan entered after knocking the door and reported, "Your Excellency, Mr. Aston has yet to leave on the liner. The new Governor-General, Ben Conrad, has sent an invitation to participate in the banquet he's hosting tonight." Ben Conrad, the person who replaced Aston as Governor-General. According to what I know, Viscount Conrad's family is a loyal subject of the royal family. Talum likely got to know Prince Edisac while being the equestrian teacher of Viscount Conrad's youngest son. Klein nodded gently as he immersed himself in Amirius Revolt's complex emotions. He remained silent for a few seconds before saying, "Inform Governor-General Conrad that it's inconvenient for me to attend the banquet, because of the injuries suffered from the Naturism sect's assault. Apologize to him on my behalf." "Yes, Your Excellency." Luan didn't persuade him otherwise and calmly left the room. A demigod definitely had the right to be willful. As long as he didn't engage in some secret ploy or commit any serious mistake, there was no way he would be blamed regardless of what he did. This was because any faction would be willing to rope in a demigod. As he watched Luan's back vanish from the door, Klein shook his head indiscernibly and sat back behind the desk. A quiet day quickly passed. When it was almost midnight, Klein, who was sleeping in the guest room, suddenly woke up and sat up. His spiritual perception told him that someone had entered the house. Klein focused his gaze at the window and saw a middle-aged man in a tailcoat. He had black hair and blue eyes, with the corners of his mouth slightly sagging. He was none other than Admiral Amirius. Phew! He's finally back. Klein slowly stood up and cautiously asked, "What item did you give me before?" He was afraid that the Admiral Amirius before him was also a faceless in disguise. Admiral Amirius stood there and answered with a stern expression, "The ninth law charm." Without waiting for Gehrman Sparrow to speak again, he took 2 steps forward and calmly asked, "Did anything happen in the past few days?" Klein controlled his facial muscles and said, "Your secretary committed a mistake and was injured." "Oh? What else?" Admiral Amirius nodded with deep reservation. Klein tried hard not to move his gaze away as he looked straight at him and said, "Your younger brother has been relieved of his post as Governor General. The new Governor General has already taken over. Your Miss Cynthia mutated into a monster and was purified by me. A number of your bodyguards and attendants were infected to a certain extent and are currently receiving treatment." Amirius's expression turned into shock bit by bit in an uncontrollable manner. His eyes moved slightly, as though he suspected whether he had returned to the wrong place. It had only been 3 days,